And we are on record. All right.
Okay, great. We'll call the City of Olivet Planning and Community Design Commission for September 17th, 2020 to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Rob Jurgel.
Present.
Carol Wagner. Jody Rich here. Richard Brophy.
Absent.
Brian Lewis.
Present.
Michael Saunders.
Present.
And Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Let it also be known that City Council person Missy Waldman is in attendance, as well as staff liaisons Carlos Trejo, Director of Planning and Community Development, Jonathan Roper, Planner GIS Coordinator, Bridget Walters, Administrative Assistants, as well as our City Attorney, Paul Martin. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
My pleasure.
All right. Okay, so at this point in time, the agenda, we'll make a call for public comments. This is an opportunity for the general public to express concerns and provide general comments regarding land issues. We do limit this to 3 minutes as recommended. We're not going to get into a question or answer unless there's just a clarification item that needs to be done. But if any of your questions are related to any of the items on new business, which is, that's listed as 12 Forsythia Lane, 650 North Warson, or 9044 Watsonia Court, please wait until we go through those agenda items, and then we'll have a moment for public comments. If you want to go ahead and list your public comments via the chat, that's an easy way to do it. You can do that now. Or if you want to raise your hand, Carlos will bring you on. So Carlos, at this point in time, is there anybody that has any public comments?
Yes, I am going to promote the panelists. It's noted as Nancy Solomon.
I don't know what Command A is.
Okay, you're unmuted.
Are you able to hear me, Carlos?
Yes, yes, we can.
All right, thank you. My name is Ed Solomon. I live at 417 Berkeley Place Court, just off Old Bonham. And I'm requesting and hoping the commission will address, I believe it's one of the later agenda items to report back to the council, but to address an issue we've been having where roosters have become kept as, well, as domestic animals, I guess, around a property near us. And really, this has been since about March, and literally roosters crow all day long. They can go 15, 20 minutes. They can go for an hour being quiet, but it is all day long. Pretty much, it significantly interrupts our ability to enjoy, the yard. I certainly would say, people want to maybe raise hens for the eggs. I understand that's very popular. That's a different matter. There really is not, in my opinion, a practical need or reason for roosters in a close suburban environment like this. It's very disruptive. So I would just appreciate, hopefully tonight there will be an opportunity for the commission to discuss that item and to look at some of the regulations of other communities around the country that I believe Barbara has prepared, and make a recommendation back to the council in October that addresses the whole topic, but specifically would prohibit roosters. Thank you, for a few minutes this evening.
No, thank you for your comments. And it is an item that's listed on our discussion items, and we'll be going through that. It does take us some time to go through these, especially if we make any recommendations for the council. It takes a little bit of time for us to go through it and discuss it. And so be patient with us, and
Sure.
we'll try to, go through it as fast as we can. So appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I will stay on this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Carlos, is there any other comments?
Chairman, I know there's a resident in. I'm not sure if they're on. Mr. Rochester, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. I'm just listening in though.
Did you want to provide some public comments?
No, I'm just listening in right now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, if that's the case, we'll move on to item 3, and this is just a quick review of the commission procedures. Usually I also talk about the Zoom, so just be patient with us. You know, we're getting better every week as we do this, but we always have a few hangups here and there, so be patient with us. If you do have a comment or a question related to any of the new business items, please raise your hand for recognition, and we'll have an opportunity for those public comments before each vote. You can also, I think as we mentioned before, you can add it to the chat line, and it can be read aloud at staff. So might be a short delay in the live stream, so just be patient with us and we'll get through it. As I mentioned, is when we go through each of these items, the staff will present a report, go through the items. There'll be a time for there'll be discussions amongst the commissioners, as well as questions or comments that we have back for the staff to answer. At that point in time, then we'll also look for public comments, go through those, and then we'll call for a vote on the item. Sometimes there might be a need for us to table an item. And so if that's the case, it'll just be brought on to the next agenda meeting and be listed as old business. Okay, Carlos, I think we'll move on to new business, and we'll go on to 12 Forsythia Lane. Petition is a community design and concept storm water management plan review. And it's related to an amendment to the PCDC approved new single family home. Petitioner is Jim Woodruff with Hibbs Homes. Petitioner owner is Ocean Cohen. And if I remember, I think, Carol, you're going to recuse yourself on this item?
Yes, I'd like to recuse myself on this item, please.
That'd be fine. We're going to take you off of the panelist at this time, and we'll be sure to bring you back. So hang with us. All right, Carlos, will you take Carol off?
Yes, sir. Bear with me 1 second here.
No worries.
Okay, and I'll let the meeting minutes reflect that Ms. Wagner is now listed as an attendee.
Great.
All right, and I believe Mr. Roper, are you going to?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, and good evening to the members of the Planning and Community Design Commission. My name is Jonathan Roper, the city planner and JS coordinator for the city. This evening, we have the first of the 3 petitions. It's a new home that they modified parts of the actual layout of the building as well as the materials and facades. So we're going to go through those all. Most of what they've done is actually written on your screen for each elevation, but we'll just go through kind of like the highlights on that and staff's recommendations. So in the guidelines, we look to have, oh, sorry, what was that? The biggest part on the front elevation, besides the windows have different trim around them, and there's a modification to the door, but the biggest change on this is the height of the actual building itself. It's about just about a foot lower than what was approved, and also the roof pitch, and being lower, the roof pitch has increased from 712 to an 812 roof pitch. It is a 1-story house, also next to a 1-story to the on the left side would be a 1-story house, so it is in conformance with that. We can go to the next slide, please, Carlos. I don't have control of the screen. Thank you. The rear is also pretty similar. There's a number of windows and doors on it, and they kept the outdoor projection of the first-story walkout screen room. What is different, however, on the left side there, the actual garage elevation has actually been broken up into two pieces. So that elevation is actually shortened a little bit. And the materials also have changed. So before they had stucco, and now it has changed the siding on there as an indicator. Next slide, please. Thank you. This side, the approved left east elevation is probably the only one that really wouldn't fit into the, well, it conforms less, staff would say, than when it was approved. If you notice on the left side of the screen that there were 3 windows on the top and there was a break in the elevation near the front, and then there was 1 window downstairs. And now there's, on the first elevation, it's the materials had switched stucco to siding. And there just is a blank wall for the first elevation, and 2 of the larger walkout windows on the lower level there. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this elevation, the most closest part to us with the 1 window that stands on the right side elevation, that's the garage side. So they actually did break, when I mentioned like the change to the floor plan, it really happens on the west side, where instead of just having 1 long wall, as you see on the left side, which did have a number of windows, it broke up that long wall into a shorter wall that's where the garage area is, and then further back behind the house. Also, the materials have changed from stucco to siding as well. At this time, one more. Next slide, please. Yep. I was going to show you the, I'm sorry, I don't have the site plan on here shown, but on the site plan, it's really just reflected, the site plan reflects the only change is where the that break is in the elevation. With that, the petitioner and homeowner is here this evening, and if you have any questions for myself or Mr. Trejo or the petitioner, we're here to answer.
Hey, could you go through those again, just the views, if you don't mind, just quickly through the slides? Because I was looking on the drawings and it almost looked like there was still stucco on the front around the garage. Is that what I'm seeing or no?
It looks like that. And around the, to the left of the door, the main door.
Okay, I thought that was stone.
Just to the,
I thought the center part of the house was stone. Left side was like a combination of stucco and siding, and then the garage was stucco?
yeah, oh, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, could you show the left elevation too? Or yeah, this, okay. And can you go back to the front elevation? I apologize, I just trying to follow. What I'm it looks like on the last elevation that we saw on the side of the house, the stucco was wrapping around, but here on the front, it looks like we have siding. Did I miss that or?
I don't believe the brick, the masonry on the left side is wrapping around at this point too. So there was a little bit on the existing approved, as you see the 2, one on the column when you walk in the front door, but that side is removed. That's correct.
So they're changing from, oh, okay. That's the other, I get it now. That's kind of more in the front of the house, but we're seeing kind of the depth if that makes sense. Okay, I understand now. Okay, sorry for the confusion, you guys. Anybody else have any questions or comments right now for Jonathan?
Does that stucco go all the way down to the ground?
There, normally for the side elevations, there is a maximum exposed foundation height of 12 inches. So whatever the finished material would be, it would have to be no more than 12 inches from the ground. So in theory, yes, it would go to the ground.
Anybody else have any questions? Carol or Mike? Kind of flipping around, checking.
Yeah, this is Mike. The only other thing I would point out is it does appear that the front, the front roof structure did get lowered a little bit too. I don't know, maybe you said that, Jonathan, and I missed it, but it does. They did bring so there's no transom over the front door, and that's, I guess, one of the reasons why they wanted to lose one of those one of those 4 windows is now down to 3. But that whole entry element is a little shorter.
Yes, the roof is.
Does anybody?
Are there any other
Would you
houses on the street that have stucco on it? New houses?
I don't believe so. I think that when we talked about it before, this was kind of a new, something new that, you know, introducing stucco, you know, into the neighborhood.
I would be very leery about approving the stucco going down to the ground, all the way down to the ground. There usually is some kind of a stone or something to protect that ethos from coming out.
Is that from an insect, you know, standpoint, or what is that from?
Moisture as well.
Makes sense. Does anybody have a concern with the, oh, never mind. I got it.
Chairman, if I can just note, because I think there was a misunderstanding. The stucco does not go all the way down to the grade level. It's roughly, you know, no less than 8 inches from the edge of grade. So when you look at that, and I'm not sure if we had explained it correctly or not, but there is a band of the foundation wall that will be exposed. We limit that to no more than 8 inches, or no less than 8 inches, no more than a foot, I believe. So just like if it was a brick structure and you have your weep holes, you know, we want to make sure that they don't get clogged or covered in the process. The architect here is showing the same, that there is a band of the foundation wall that will be exposed along the grade. I'm not sure that's what Mr. Spiegelglass was referring to.
Yes, sir. Thank you for clearing that up.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns about the proposed left east side with no windows on that face, at least on the upper portion? I think I'd be curious to ask the petitioner kind of if there's, you know, why they no longer have the windows there. But I would also defer to some, you know, the other commission members to see what their thoughts are.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mike. I would suggest we hear from the petitioner, but yeah, whether the windows have been deleted or been downsized, we just understand what the logic is behind it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I think if there's no other questions or comments, we can bring the petitioner on.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So the decision behind it was simply because it's the master bedroom and the master bathroom. It is fairly close to the neighbors, and I would just prefer my privacy. This is why I chose not to have that. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, okay. I guess I can understand that. What do you guys, any comments or anything? Any other questions or comments from the petitioner? For the petitioner?
Well, there's more than just that one window on the left side. We've reduced the windows on the front. We made them, one window smaller. Some of the other windows got smaller. So I was just curious on what sort of the logic behind some of those moves were. So, we reduced the windows on the back. So it was more, the left side is the, is obviously one issue into the master bedroom, and I appreciate that, although I do note that there's a window right over the master bathtub. There was a lot of moves with these windows. They just got a lot smaller, and the proportions looked a lot, unfortunately they looked a lot better before. It was a very handsome elevation before with the proportion of the windows, and I'm not sure we're there with these new elevations. The front garage door also changed, so.
Ma'am, could you respond to any of those questions?
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
No problem.
So for the left side specifically, it's simply just, as I explained, the privacy. In the front, the reason that the 4 windows got lowered to 3 is since the roof line is a little lower, it makes more sense. If not, it will be almost the entire wall will be windows. The rest, in the right side, I know there is the kitchen wall just got inside. We shorted some of the back of the house in the floor plan, and I believe this is why you see one less window there, as the entire wall is just shorter. That is pretty much the logic behind it. I believe the rest of the windows, most of them stayed pretty much the same, maybe just slightly shorter because of the roof line.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do have to correct myself. The plans show a window at the master bathtub, but the elevations do not. So I just want to correct my comment there. I apologize.
Right. I'm wondering if it's at all possible to just put like glass block above that, tub or something like that to give that elevation some, at least something on that upper portion. And then still maintain the privacy that I think you're trying to go for.
I think it can be doable.
Okay.
Can we maybe have a better understanding of why the material changed from stucco to siding? Maybe you said it and I just wasn't focused and missed it. But what was the thinking behind the change in siding? And are we proposing a hardy plank material for the siding?
I would prefer stucco myself. I prefer the look of stucco myself. We chose to go with siding as around the house. It was just a very large amount of stucco, and it was more expensive than was suggested by the architect. So when it came to budgeting, we decided to change it to siding, more similar to the other houses in the neighborhood. I would just prefer to keep the front looking more clean and light.
You know,
And-
I actually missed that in the drawings. I was thinking that we were adding siding to the front, but yeah, I see now it's now just stucco and that, you know, rock.
And the stone, we got more stone, so it will be at least 50%.
And what kind of siding, I'm sorry?
I am not sure what is the material name. I'm assuming Jim is here on the call as well and can put more lights on that.
Do the drawings show? Carlos, are you trying to bring Jim on?
Chairman, if Jim is on the attendee list, it's not listed as him. So if there is somebody representing Hibbs Homes, if you can show your hand. I do not see.
Oh, Carlos, if they're on a call in, they might not be able to show a hand.
I do have one call-in number, but it's a 850 area code.
It may be the architect. I believe that will be the architect. He's supposed to be on this call as well.
Carlos, are you going to try to bring them on? Is that what you're
Yeah,
trying?
I do have it unmuted. So if the individual with the 850 area code, if you can speak, you should be on.
I think he might be still muted. Oh, there he is.
Again, I don't think it's on our side.
When I look at the participant list, there is someone named Sam. I believe that will be the architect. His name is Samuel Morgan. So
Yes, and there we go.
Thank you.
I apologize.
No problem. And Sam, you should be promoted to the as a panelist, and you should be able to disconnect or do your audio.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I sent in a message. We didn't specify a specific siding, but I would expect that Hibbs would be using a cement-based siding like Hardy. That would be the most common.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Chairman, there are a couple of things, if I can note for the commission,
Yeah.
regarding that. We've been engaged, we've had a discussion with the subdivision trustees of Forsythia regarding some recent construction, not specifically to this property, where they've expressed some greater cooperation from staff regarding the maintenance of the streets. One of the conditions we're going to add going forward, and it's not reflective in this report, it was based on a discussion with the Public Works Director. Going forward, one of the inspections prior to the beginning of construction will be to meet at the field and look at the street curb conditions. In situations like Forsythia Lane, where it is a private street, that the street representatives be there and make sure that it's inventoried. We've had some complaints that after construction and permits, and occupancies have been granted, that street conditions were not addressed or corrected. We apply the same standard to all streets that we would, from a public street to a private street. There's been concerns from private street trustees about those conditions. This will give them an opportunity to bring their comments forward, and if they want to further enforce anything above and beyond what the city would enforce, they'd have that opportunity to have that direct contact with the petitioner. The other thing I do need to note, there is an outstanding permit that's been issued that is Hibbs Homes is the holder of. Before we issue any additional permits to Hibbs Homes, this outstanding permit needs to be addressed and closed, and it's regarding the occupancy on a similar property on Forsythia Lane.
Okay, so just to clarify, neither of those two items are going to necessarily affect or make us or not do a vote on this right now.
That's correct.
It's just a matter of permits and things like that need to be addressed.
Correct, sir.
With staff. Okay, great. Okay. Any questions about that from the Ms. Cohen? Do you have any questions about that?
No, I'm unsure how another project will rely on my project. It is concerning, yes. I don't know. I don't know.
We just want to make sure that you're aware of this as well. So, okay, that being said, are there, do we have a proposed amendment? I was looking through the packet and I wasn't sure if this was from the previous one. So if there aren't any other questions or comments, does anybody want to make a suggested motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the petition for amendment for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 12 Forsythia Lane, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated September 17th, 2020, subject to any staff conditions noted herein. Carlos, do I need to add the two additional ones that you just mentioned regarding the street, or?
The condition we would ask would be the street, just the street only. The other would be an administrative process.
Got it. Okay. Subject to any staff conditions noted herein, with the addition of a survey of the existing street conditions and the addressing any damage that might be done to the street to get it back to the existing condition. Does that work for you, Carlos?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mike, do we want to also add anything about that glass block above?
Oh, and yes, yeah, thank you. And I forgot about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the addition of glass block over the master bath window, the same location as presented in the previous design.
And do we want to clarify the fact that the siding will be a cement board?
I should have just let you do this one. Yes, and the siding would be a cementitious material.
All right. Motion's been made by Mike Saunders. Do I hear a second?
I second.
It's been seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Saunders,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Rich
Approve.
and Commissioner Jurgill.
Approved.
And the motion passes 5-0.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Cohen, and thank you, the other participant that was online. I forgot your name. I apologize, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we need to bring Carol back when you get a chance, Carlos.
Chairman, and now note that Commissioner Wagner has been placed back as a panelist to join the commission discussion for the rest of the agenda.
All right, great. We'll move
I
on
just
to,
want to make sure, it looks like your video is working, but your audio.
whose audio? My audio or Carol's?
Carol's right now. Just want to make, I know she was having some problems.
Carol, can you unmute just real quick, just to verify that you're on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I was having trouble unmuting.
Okay, we'll move on to item B of new business, and this is 650 North Warson Road. Petition type is a community design review of an open air canopy. The petitioner is Jeff Miller, the synagogue administrator for Nuisance Hari B'nai Zion congregation. I hope I pronounced that correctly. So, Carlos, is this you?
Yes, Chairman, and let me note the agendas that were printed for your packets had 650 North Price Road. The agenda posted, your packets indicated North Warson Road. The agenda notes it's 650 North Price Road. So I apologize for the mix-up there, and that was brought to my attention by Ms. Rich. So thank you on that.
Good, good.
Just northeast of the intersection of Old Bonham and North Price Road, of course, is Logo School, and just north of them is the synagogue that was built. I think it's probably been about 10 years or pretty close or so since in existence. Once the school property was subdivided, a building was placed. I know they have in that building, you can see they have an outdoor patio area. They're usually used for several occasions and such, and they usually have some type of temporary covering every once in a while put in place, pending on what activity is going on in there. They had submitted for a building permit application to place a canopy structure on the property grounds in that hard surface area, kind of shown here in red. It's a 12 by 14 canopy, roughly 8 feet in height, so it totals about 168 square feet. And this normally would be handled administratively if the property was zoned residential. But the property is zoned PA Public Activity District. The use itself, place of worship, is permitted by and has been authorized by site plan review when the building was, when the lot was bought and building was constructed. It is an accessory structure, but again, the current list of accessory structures that are authorized for administrative approval are only those on residential property. And since this is a PA district property, it is subject to community design review only. And that is why it's before you, before the commission. We had a discussion with the organization, make sure that they were aware, and told them we would work with them to get this on this agenda. Again, this is the proposed canopy on the upper right-hand corner. Approximate location is kind of shown. It's not attached to the building. It's somewhat detached from the building and serves as a 168 square foot sun enclosure. This is kind of a street view. We kind of impose this. This is probably a little bit larger than what the canopy would be, but you can see the depth of the property, the extent of the front yard, the topography, and then this hardscape patio area and the canopy placement of where it would be. I'd be glad to answer any specific questions, and we do have a representative from the synagogue in attendance to speak also.
I don't have any questions. Does anybody else? Okay. Do we have a need? I'll ask the petitioners. Do we have a need to bring the petitioner on?
I will, just since they had waited. Mr. Miller, you're on, and if there's any comments you have that you'd like to express to the commission.
Sorry. Thank you for putting us on the agenda so quickly. Really, the structure is to be used for some social and outdoor activities, and with a little bit of, shelter, basically. So that's all I really have to say, unless there's other questions.
I don't have any, and I appreciate you taking the time to be on. Does Mike or does anybody else have any questions? I wasn't sure if I over-talked somebody.
This is Mike. I was just curious about what you're proposing as far as the colors of the structure. Is the structure and the canvas or the covering going to be the same? Or just out of curiosity, have you thought about the colors for this structure or for this?
Yes, it's the panels on the roof are actually more of a I don't know if it's exactly a plexiglass, but it's a hard surface. It isn't really canvas. The color is a light bronze-ish, in between sand and bronze, I guess, which will sort of match the color of the building, the exterior of the synagogue. A little bit darker, slightly darker. But again, the panels are on the roof. They're more panels than they are than it is a canvas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, do I hear a suggested motion?
I'll make a motion.
That'd be great. Thanks,
A motion to approve the petition for community design review for the proposed patio cover at Nusach Hari B'nai Zion Congregation addressed at 650 North Price Road as presented and noted within the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated September 17, 2020, subject to any staff conditions noted here.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion was made by Brian Lewis and seconded by Michael Saunders. Carlos, we call the vote, please.
Mr. Spiegelglass?
Approved.
Mr. Saunders?
Approved.
Mr. Lewis?
Approve.
Ms. Rich?
Approved.
Ms. Wagner?
Yes.
And Mr. Jurgel?
Approved.
And the motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it all. Okay.
No problem. Okay, we'll move on to item C of new business, which is 9044 Watsonia Court. I believe Mike Saunders is going to recuse himself for this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I am going to recuse myself.
All right. And I forgot to introduce, while Mike's going off, I'll go ahead and introduce it as a site plan, community design, and concept stormwater management plan review for a 2-level, 576 square foot enclosed accessory structure. The petitioner is Pamela Scott. The property owner is Vomilia Macquarie, I believe. If I mispronounced it, I sincerely apologize. But Carlos?
Yes. Chairman, now I'm going to let Jonathan kind of knows the more ins and outs of what's being proposed on the petition, and then we'll get into the discussion regarding the variations.
Great.
Thank you, Chairman. And for the three action items we have this evening, it's a accessory structure. It was officially accessory structure under that category. It is a detached garage, and on lots slightly over between the 10 to 20,000 category. So on a lot that size, they're allowed a 600 square foot garage. Not to exceed 15 feet in height. One of those on the side, by the way. And it's in the rear yard, so we don't have to worry about the front yard setback as it's compliant. The rear yard, it should be no further than 10 feet from the rear, and side no further than 5 feet beyond the principal structure, and may not extend to the side of the lot. When a structure exceeds or is not enumerated under the Article 16, accessory structures and uses, the commission has review of authority of that, and staff does not have review to go through it. So that's why we bring this to the commission today. Here are the elevations for that. The front elevation, so it would be part of the elevation would match some of the brick on the lower level you see next to the door. It is a 2-level structure, so the steps are on the right side elevation that lead up to a 2nd story. You can see the windows here. The other 2 elevations, there's a rear with windows on all 4 elevations and a left side elevation. The left side is the elevation that is has less articulation because it just is more or less siding on that side. If we can go to the next slide, please. And as we look at the site plan, what we look at on here, the placement in the site plan review, we look at what are the impacts of the proposed structure on neighboring properties, the property itself, different items such as issues with stormwater and other items. And this particular garage, the location is less in question because it is compliant with the setbacks, not only of the accessory structure setbacks, but of the lot as well. If you were to treat this as part of the house, let's just say, because it's 2 stories, so let's say if it was part of the house, it would have a setback from the rear of about 44 feet or so. The detached structure is proposed to be about 90-something feet from the rear. The side yard setbacks, which are on this lot, 10% of the lot width, which is around, I think it's 46 feet. The setbacks automatically are just 5 feet. So on this site, the house and any other structures would have at least a 5-foot setback. This is setback 7 feet from the east property line, or the line to the right of the addition. And the other one is even greater than that one. The closest property line it would get to would be the one to the east, which is on the right side. I also would note that the 2 properties, the subject property and the property to the east, share a driveway, and they both have take part in an easement to make that possible. So what they have on the site, if this were not the height elevation that staff could approve would be 15 feet, and also no more taller than the house. The location, besides the height, the location actually would be allowed administratively. I also would note that when we look at, what's the impact of a 23-foot detached building in the rear of the house, to the house, the existing house itself is a 2-story house, or you can say 1.5 story, a 2-story house. And the lot slopes, so the street slopes just about 10 feet lower than if you were standing at the street in front of the house. The foundation would be about 10 feet lower than where it's standing. So it actually is sunk in from the street as well. So the house, it's less visible from the front because it is fully behind the house. Also, the house is about a 1.5 to 2 story, but it also has a walkout basement. So the visibility would be less in there. If we go to the next slide, please. And this kind of goes through the staff thought behind, because staff really hasn't had a garage that, there's might have been 1 or 2 that has exceeded the 15 feet. So the commission has approved the garage that exceeds the 15 feet, but it has never been by 23 feet. So looking at, the reasoning of that being, they're doing it's not just a really tall garage, they're doing a second story on there. But what staff tried to make, because of the request being 8 additional feet versus 2 additional feet, how to look at this. So we looked at, neighboring properties, and you can see the house on the left side of the screen there. So that they have a detached garage that's actually pretty close facing the street. And then they have a house, you can see in the blue, that's a little bit set back. So it's much different than the house to the west of it. And then on the right side of the screen, you have it's the existing house placement. They actually did in 2014 and 15 new renovations. I just took this as a Google Street View, but they actually had different renovations to the house, so it looks a little more refreshed actually, and they did a really nice job there. But this is the eastern view, where you can see where the car is parked is actually the neighboring property, and then on the just between the house and that car would be the detached garage. And I believe we got, as part of stormwater and actually, staying on the slide, if you go to the center of it, they do have this is not a case of, because we do get those where it's, do something without a building permit and ask for forgiveness. They are fully permitted the garage. They actually laid the foundation in 2017, which would support a garage, or in this case, what they're trying to do. So they can still use, they are permitted to use that foundation where it's at in the placement. So that is poured, but it's just about the height at this point. And the last thing standard is that regarding stormwater, so the foundation is laid, the driveway is there, so they really wouldn't be adding any more impervious area at this point. The one thing staff would note is that the downspouts, different than the foundation, might actually, instead of sheet flowing off the foundation, it actually may be concentrated in a downspout. So it might be good to know where the downspouts are going, especially if it's kind of aimed at the pools, because you don't want to create unnecessary issue when you can kind of pipe it back a little bit further maybe, or, well, we would have to look at that, but don't know the condition today and if that would have impact or not, but it's, part of stormwater review, so that's why we bring it up. After that, I'm here to answer any questions or comments the petitioner may have, and also the petitioner and their architect is here on the line as well.
Jonathan, I just got a couple questions actually. And so this is a front entrance, but it's directly behind the house. So they're going to have to come kind of down the driveway, and then, as they're driving, make a kind of a left and then, or a right and then a left to get into the garage. So kind of a S-turn entrance. Is that right? Or is it a side facing that I just misunderstood?
No, that's fine. Okay, I was understanding.
You broke up. I didn't hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry. That would be my understanding.
Okay. And so,
Chairman?
yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Jonathan, I have a question about the report. On the summary of the petition on item 4, staff says that the last sentence, that furthermore, the placement is fully behind the home and does not take advantage of being 5 feet beyond the primary structure. I'm not sure what that means, does not take advantage of being 5 feet beyond.
Sure. So under the accessory code, you anything larger than a shed is 120 square feet and 12 feet in height. Anything larger than a shed kind of goes under what we're reviewing it under, like an accessory enclosed building. And those are allowed to be up to, before, they're allowed to be up to 5 feet. So if here's a house, they're allowed to be up to 5 feet from beyond the house. So technically, you could see part of the garage from the street or part of the building from the street if they were jutting out a little from the house. In this particular case, they are fully behind the house, meaning that if the setback, they could be up to the side yard setback at this point, which is 7 feet, or I'm sorry, 5 feet, but they are not. They are 7 feet behind the building. I'm talking in circles right now. It seems just the building can be up to 5 feet from behind the house, and they aren't doing that. Theirs is nestled in right behind the house.
Okay.
Apologize for that long answer.
Carlos, I got a question, or a couple. Well, actually, Jonathan, I have 2 questions for you. One is, does there a neighborhood association that needs to approve these as well? And as well as, have any of the neighbors been contacted or added any input? I am kind of concerned about the pool that's over there, and if that, becomes a privacy issue, with the neighboring pool.
Staff did not receive, postings did go out. Staff did not receive any indications from any of the neighbors about any of this. And I did have a communication with the neighbor to the east. So the west is the pool, the east is the other one. And just noted, talked to him about it. And she did note that that is it was a little bit more difficult to get the owner, is what, to my understanding, because it was a rental property. So there's a renter there, but the owner was not the available party. So.
Okay. Carlos, my other concern that I have, and I think others might share this, is the concern about precedence, with this, because I know we haven't, allowed any, 2-level detached car garages, but we've just recently, approved, a 2-level car garage, but it was kind of like an addition, but connected with a deck. So what do you think about some of the precedence issues?
It is a concern. I think it's my opinion that when the commission was putting the accessory structure code together, the intent of having a variation process was to allow for a plus or minus type of tolerance for consideration, cognizant that the structure would be one level or single story. From an enforcement perspective, it puts us in a quandary in terms of when the next one comes in, regardless of the neighborhood or the neighborhood character, what justifications are in place that made this one amenable, but maybe isn't warranted in a different location. It's a concern, and it's worthy of some commission discussion. Ultimately, from our end, this impacts, Jonathan and I in the zoning review as we try to persuade applicants to stay within the limits of the code. I think there are some unique conditions on this property that could be considered as you go through the site plan review process in there, but those should be thoroughly discussed, and what other options or considerations both to the aesthetics, the architecture, or the connectivity between the two structures are put in place. The more direction that there is in that helps Jonathan and I for the next application where they want, a similar height in a different neighborhood, or even more height in there. Again, it's one of those height requests that really wasn't anticipated to be part of a variation process through an aesthetic review. But there are some unique characteristics to this lot, both in terms of its placement, its topography, where we don't have many lots that are like this. or had that same amount of depth in the property. But long story short, it does give me a little concern. Again, it's just how do we articulate the next time around that somebody wants, 4 or 5 feet, and it's just not appropriate when we've granted, in this case, it could be 7, 8 feet in height, or somebody wants wants to place a 2-level structure. And again, when we write codes, I mean, it's never perfect, and it never considers every possible scenario or option or alternative that could present itself. And ultimately, a lot of codes, once in place, they're changed because they're reactive afterwards. It may be something that, the commission considers this and has some, and finds that there is some merits and some site plan review compliance with the surroundings, that we go back and we add some changes to the code to make sure that the conditions that were noted are considered the next time around. That way, from our end, again, the concern is the credibility and what we tell the next person when like a press, even though it's considered case-by-case analysis, it does set a precedence, and we have, Jonathan and I are left to respond back of why that decision was there, and that's where I think it warrants some lengthy commission discussion.
I mean, I definitely think with the change in elevation, the fact that it drops down, below, that definitely, helps mitigate some of the height. It would have been easier if somehow the deck was connected to it, that way it's almost looks like an addition. But if they're going to need to be that front entrance, they can't have, if they're going to be driving their cars through there, there's probably not going to be a way to connect that. Like we had it with that other house that we just recently approved. Go ahead.
Well, Carlos, I'm curious if your concern, and I get it either way, is more around it. Would it make a difference to you if it was a garage only, or is because it has a studio on the top, does that help in terms of the approval, or does it not matter because it's a structure regardless of what the structure is?
In whole, it is a structure, but it's both components. When the accessory structure code was drafted, I believe there was a deliberate intent of the commission to limit the height of accessory structures so that there would not be more than one level to them. But that was then that, this is a different commission, and these are things that the commission, may consider or warrant that there are needs. From a planning perspective, we are seeing more and more, in our profession, mixed use accessory structures that could have, let's say, whether it's a studio or a little suite or a shop or things of that nature. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with those uses as long as they're within the character or compliance of the surroundings. And there are some lot characteristics that minimize any adverse impacts on adjacent properties. But many times they're pretty well called out. Our ordinance isn't there yet. And again, it's because many of the times we are reactionary in the preparation of the ordinance. We really didn't anticipate this kind of height coming in for this purpose. And I don't know that directly answers what you're looking for, but I think it's both the height and that there's a different type of use of that's beyond storage.
No, and I guess it makes sense. It's just the problem is one person might think garage and studio is okay. Somebody else says, well, if I just want a really tall garage, or I want a barn, or I want something like that, and it opens the door, and I understand.
I think the fact that it's one thing is that it doesn't have a bathroom or sinks or plumbing. It's not like it's going to be used as a as a bedroom or, you know, kind of an apartment. I think that's better. I don't know if the other commission members, how they feel about that.
I would agree, and I think also to your point, and this is tough to write in terms of regulation, but the fact that if you almost look at the total height relative to the house or the topography is different because it slopes. You know, if it was level, then that's one thing, but the fact that when you look at it, it's almost lower for that reason. So I don't know if you could put regulation in there to say, as long as it doesn't vary, you know, beyond where the house foundation is, but it gets difficult.
Jonathan, what's the change in the height between the top of roof for the existing house versus this proposed top of height for the garage? Do you know?
I do. That is, and I'm just going to go quickly to page 5 of 13 on your staff report under community design under height. So I'll note the basement floor and the floor of the foundation of the garage are about the same. So under the staff report, again on page 5, the height from the roof peak will be 607 in elevation. So the height of the roof of the house should be around 607. Oh, I'm sorry. The height of the roof peak of the garage will be about 607, and the height of the home is 617. So about a 10-foot difference from roof peak to roof peak.
And how close is the existing house that they share a driveway with going to be from this garage structure?
That one, I believe it's about 17 feet between the two. So 7 on this side. I'm sorry, maybe 16 feet, 7 on this side. There we go. So they're about 8.92 feet away, and this is about 7. So they're about 15 feet away. However, the other house, the closest part is 8.2 feet, but it's further back in the rear yard.
And that is a single story. So the second 2-story is going to be on top of that. Yeah, at the same elevation, correct?
Almost. The neighbor to the east is slightly higher. The lot slope towards the southwest, and they're on the east side, so they're slightly at a little bit of a higher elevation. But yes, that house is 1 story. However, their house is more set back. Their house, it basically begins where this garage ends, and that piece is like an L shape. So the piece up closest towards the street is actually a bit further back.
Okay. That definitely concerns me with the height of those 2 difference where there's going to be a garage that's 2 stories next to a single story home.
Can we go back, Carlos, to the site plan and get a closer look?
Yeah, 1 second.
I just wonder, you know, with that that house to the east, you know, what's the, you know, what's the future of that house? You know, if it's being rented, I'm not sure what kind of condition it's in. If that's, you know, I'd hate to.
Jonathan, are you saying that it would kind of mimic something like this? This is the original house plans in here, and then here's the accessory structure. Here's your basement area. And I'm sorry, it might, bear with me. I'm gonna try to get a spotlight here. unfortunately, this is probably as good as I can get, but here is the basement floor. And Jonathan, you're saying that the garage is
The garage height should be at a 607 and the height of the house is at a 617 roughly.
I really think we kind of need a cross section to kind of show that it's not possible for me to properly proportion the two structures to kind of address the commission's question regarding that height.
Well, we were, if we go back to the site plan real quick, look at the height between that and the property.
Okay.
That's a lot of vinyl or a lot of siding on that one face. There are no windows on that
Jonathan,
side?
is this what you're looking for?
The site plan. Like between where the neighbor's at, if we could zoom in, where between lot 43 and 44. Thank you. Yeah, so we were discussing how far the house is. So that exterior porch. So a portion of the detached structure would be close by, and then part of the other side of the house would. So there is a portion that it's about 15.58.
15.8.
Oh, I'm sorry, 15.8, yes. And the elevation, the ground floor is slightly higher in elevation. The foundation is, and the top of the foundation higher than the proposed garage. The neighboring house is higher.
You know, it is interesting with that house to the east. It's got an unusual placement of the house, especially compared to all of the other houses that are around there, you know, where it's set far, you know, way back and sideways. Where if it was further up along in line with all the other houses, it may not be as significant. And I
When
don't
they
know-
look out, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, appreciate
When
it.
they look out their front door on the house to the east, will they be looking into this new garage?
I couldn't tell you if there are where their windows are exactly at, but possibly so. I couldn't tell you where the windows are at, but possibly so. Similar to how the subject house in the garage to the west of it kind of is, like right now.
Well, if we don't have any other discussions, I mean, we can further discuss this, but maybe we should hear from the petitioner at this time. Carol, I see you nodding. Did you have a question or did you want to hear from the petitioner?
No, I concur. I'd love to hear from the petitioner.
Okay, great.
Chairman, you should have the architect being scheduled on, and that is Jackson Scott. And then you should have the property owner, Lumedia Mockery. Also, both have been promoted up to panelists. So
Great. Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. This is Pam.
Hi, Pam. Thank you for joining.
Okay.
I will like to just compliment the owner for the existing renovations that she did to her house. I mean, You can see the existing in that right picture that's there, what it used
Oh, yeah.
to look like compared to what it looks like now. It's stunning.
It's
I'm very,
totally
very,
different.
yeah, very, very impressed.
She did a nice job with her color selections and so on. But anyway, on to this garage she would like to have. You mentioned about the east elevation, about not having any windows or anything over there, but that was kind of our thought, was it was beneficial to us and the neighbor, because you were worried about the pool on the other side. Again, I got limited window, I got a door to go in upstairs, but that's about it for the guy looking over the pool, if you were worried about that. But she really didn't want any to look out over towards the other neighbors. Her views are in the back or towards the front, towards our existing house.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Have you guys made any contacts with the adjacent neighbors?
Lamelia has. I believe she's probably sitting there on the sideline waiting to be let into the, I know she's talked to both of her neighbors about it. She'd be the better one to talk to with it.
Good. Carlos?
She's been added. I'm not getting
Okay.
a response back though.
All right.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
There she is.
Hey guys, how are you?
Very good. Very good. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So I have spoken to most of my neighbors, even the one behind me and the one with the pool. So if you see the house from the back, they're all kind of like 3-story houses from the back because of the elevation. And the disadvantage for that one house, that's the only one house which is sitting quite far back, which that's why that one wall, I was doing it to more like for the neighbors. And we could add some landscaping to help them to have a better view instead of the view of the garage, inside of the garage.
No, that I understand that. That makes sense. I'm just wondering if there's anything we can also do to that. You know, I mean, right now, I think the commission, we have some concerns with the height of the structure.
Right.
But if there's anything else that maybe could be done with that side, you know, still maintain the privacy. So like you said, you know, either false windows or some sort of break in that elevation. I mean, I think the landscaping would help, but landscaping doesn't always last, you know, so.
We could move, one of the thing I've been talking to Pam was maybe move one set of the windows, which is on the back, to the side. So we have 2 sets on the back and 2 sets on the side.
I think well, does anybody else have any thoughts or comments? I'm not an architect, so I'm probably not the best person to discuss this item. And I kind of wish we had, I know Mike's, you know, recused himself, and I wish we had our other resident architect, Richard Brophy. I know he's not an architect, but he sometimes plays one.
Yeah, we do have like 4 windows on the back, top and bottom. So I was gonna move one set to the side, and maybe window blinds would help the neighbors. But at the same time, I'm still gonna put some evergreen to kind of help the privacy issue with the neighbors.
Okay.
The only other thought would be to change the siding, maybe horizontal on the bottom and change the top half to a vertical to break up the monotony.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
I like the idea of the windows.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, good.
So we have top down, the similar to the back and the side.
Carol, what do you agree with that?
I like the idea of moving the windows.
Okay.
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 So on the left side, you're going to have the two upper ones?
No, we're talking, or I thought we were talking one up, one down and pulling that around so it looks
Okay, I
symmetrical.
understand.
Symmetrical, yeah.
No, I get it.
And then we'll just shift the others over so they all line, kind of center up in the wall on the rear and that left side.
Sure. Let me ask you a question about the height. And I was curious, is the height, the size of the studio, is that being sized based on the size of the garage? Like, because that's a pretty big space up there. Or I mean, has there been any thoughts of doing like a 1.5 story? And, you know, that way it's a little bit lower height, but you still can get the studio in place. It's just going to shrink the size of it, I understand, but I was just curious if that was any thoughts.
No, we really didn't talk about that because she was looking at an area where she could set up for her paintings, et cetera, and work on out there.
And one of the things too, I wanted the garage to have the similar look to the house. And I didn't want to have a different kind of style or architecture difference compared to the main house. So if you look at the garage, it's pretty similar to the main house.
Right. Any commission members have any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Tim?
we have to show a hardship, I believe, for this. That's correct, isn't it?
There wouldn't be any hardship. It's just looking through a site plan review about the impacts on different impacts that it would create. So it would less be a hardship, but just more of what are the impacts that would or would not be acceptable, I guess.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? I am still concerned about the effect of the. I'm not opposed necessarily to this particular site because or this particular one, because it does fit nicely behind the way it's centered behind the house. I think she's done a great job with the existing renovations and the look of this matching it. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But I am concerned about how if that's a significant amount of distinction between this and potential other places that might be building accessory structures that are 2 levels. And Carlos, I'm just not sure if there's anything else we need to further review on that.
Well, I think there would need to be some discussion from the commission and some resemblance of what those issues what the commission finds that makes this within within the character of the surroundings, such as the topography, and they've provided that, and my preference, I would like to see a couple of more cross sections to see the proximity between the 2 buildings on the east and the garage, and then the garage and the home. The one thing I'll note, if there was a connection, I'm looking to in terms of how what other options could be considered to make this work as an accessory structure or so, and what the other is if they're attached. Well, in this case, you have 2 independent structures, but if, this garage, is within the buildable area of the lot, and if there was some type of 3-dimensional connection between the home and the garage, then it would be within a footprint of the buildable area, and that kind of helps, minimize the distinction and may even kind of limit, the need for the height to be an issue in the process. Now it's up to the commission to what extent this connection needs to be, but if it was some type of breezeway or trellis that connected the back of the home to the stairway to where you start going up on the garage, or where that garage door is, it kind of helps. Again, I'm looking at it as how I explain why the variation was granted to the next petition. Because again, I think they've done a nice job. I think some of the commission's comments to address some of the mass and the elevation articulation are well. It's just, you know, this height is significant, and whether or not it was the intent of the commission to authorize that much, height in an accessory structure.
Is that something you guys would consider?
Amelia,
Yes.
would you consider a trellis maybe?
Well,
Just like
so
or
the
it's an
question-
open deal that would go from the house to the garage.
But I remember when the driveway was to allow like a U-turn to the garage, or you can pull in and pull out. So I'm not sure how they want
It'll tighten that up a little bit, but it's not, we can make, it doesn't have to be a direct shot down. It can be down and then make a return to this new garage.
So are you pulling the diagram up? I'm not sure what, so I need to build like a space between the house and the garage?
It would be just a few posts.
Okay.
With a couple of beams, some cross beams to create a little open trellis walkway that would follow out to the garage. Okay, we'd still wind up with plenty of room.
So would that be connecting to the stairs
Yes,
for the
it'd be
deck?
connecting from the house to this garage, yes. Are you opposed to that?
I'm not opposed to that. I'm just trying to understand how that's gonna look. Do you have a picture of the deck on the back? Is anybody can put the picture of the deck in the back?
In the report.
It would be on
there's a
that one
picture.
photograph you furnished.
Yeah, Jonathan, do you have that one?
It's coming up.
This is the back.
I'm still not seeing the picture yet.
Well,
No, the actual
an actual
picture.
photograph of it.
The actual photograph, because that doesn't have the deck.
Photo on page 713 on your staff. report.
Yes.
Yeah, can you pull that up on the screen? Please, thank you.
Nothing like putting pressure on it.
Okay, so so the driveway here is meant for pulling into the garage and pulling out. So are you talking about by the grass side, you wanna like a fence and canopy? I'm not, is that like a fence?
It would kind of come off where the bottom of your stairs hit.
Yeah,
and
okay.
flow out from there.
So like a private fence connecting to the
well, we're calling it a
garage?
trellis. It's open, it's simple matter, and we stain it to match the rest of the deck. It just looks like it belongs, and it becomes a walkway area.
I'm fine with that. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm fine with that.
So you would be good with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. I think before we can bring this to a vote or discussion, I do think there's a few other things that we'd like to get. And that's
Okay.
kind of, some cross sections.
Yeah, I got that. One each way.
And also, the new window placements.
Right.
As well as maybe the landscaping ideas that you're going to be putting up. I would love, is there a neighborhood association involved with this area?
No, we don't, but I've spoke to the neighbor like next to me. and I have two neighbors, the one with the pool behind me, and I have one back. Actually, she was supposed to be attending the meeting. I'm not sure if she did attend. But we don't have a neighborhood association. It's just the neighbors.
Okay, okay. Well, I still think it would be good. I mean, I'm a little concerned with that house to the east, and I think there's a few other commission members that share that concern as well. And I would, you know, I think it'd be good to get their input, you know, with that as well. And if Tim, I know you were concerned by that, and see if that would be helpful for you as well.
So do you want me talk, because she's the landlord, the people who live there, they're renters. Do you want me to contact the owner and have discussion with her, or what do you want me to do?
Yeah, if the owner could provide an email, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
And then even some pictures, just so we can kind of get a general idea of, you know, of the other house, you know, their view of this as well.
Okay. Well, the one thing I know for sure is unfortunate the way the placement of that house is. Even the house next to it on the east side, they are literally looking down to the house. So it's kind of like unfortunate. There's nothing can be done because of the way the house is placed too, even from the house on the east.
If you could show some pictures of that, that'd be fantastic. That'd be very helpful. But I see what you're talking about, but I think it would be helpful.
Okay.
Did anybody else have any questions or comments? I'm going to scroll through the attendees. Hold on. For some reason, I can't get my own mouse to work. Well, if any commission members have any questions, go ahead and raise your voice. It would be great. Carlos, was there anything else that you wanted?
No, sir.
Or needed, I should say. Okay. So I think at this point in time, I think we'll go ahead and just table this for now, and we'll bring it up on the next agenda item if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, it'll take me a day or two to put it together, but yeah, we'll get it back in.
Fantastic.
Our next scheduled meeting will be on Thursday, October 1st.
Okay.
So, okay.
We'll make sure we make it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Chairman, if you can bear with me, I am going to bring Mr. Saunders back as panelist.
Okay, great.
I am going to reconfigure the screen back to the agenda.
I'm back.
Mike, how are you?
Hi.
All right. So I guess we'll move on to item number 5, discussion items. And this is, I guess we're calling it quality of life items. So Carlos, I think you're going to handle this. Or is
Yes,
this John?
if I can allow, the city manager has some comments that she wanted to provide for the commission. And you did receive a memo from her that was placed in your packets. And then Ms. Sondite, if you'd like to address the commission first.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Thank you all for your time. And I'm not going to take much of it because I know your meetings have been going on for quite a while. As my memo, as I state in my memo, I kind of wish we would have used maybe a different term because, you know, the urban agriculture maybe would have been a better term as opposed to the quality of life, because I think just using that phrase made it seem bigger than what the council had intended. The council was really struggling with, has been struggling with the 3 items before you for a while now, and most of those are issues that have arisen from complaints by residents. And what we've noticed is, as they've talked about it, what became obvious is that the topics became very unwieldy the more we spoke, and that really the council made the decision that let's just take a step back and let's really just address, you know, be more specific in what we're looking at and not try to expand it. And so that's why kind of they went through the process that they went through to try and kind of drill down to kind of what some of what the issues were that were coming. So instead of looking at, we don't want to look at all invasives, let's just really look at bamboo and let's see how we can address that. Because the ability to be successful in the process is probably heightened by actually just trying to work with just a few things at a time. If we try to address everything at once and we try to address all invasives at once, we're probably not going to be successful at it. The other reason I think that this approach is it works well, kind of taking a more narrow approach, is that really what we're trying to figure out, and this you folks know this, you're trying to figure out what the community wants, and then you're trying to put some parameters around that. And the reality is that there's 7 of you, however many there are on tonight, and then there are the 5 council members, and maybe if people call in, you'll get another. But it's not really until we get these things on the books and have some standards out there that we're really going to get some of the feedback from the residents, and we're going to find out how well is this working. The reason that these items are before you is because, and that's really was staff. It was Carlos and I having a conversation, and Carlos really saying these really are land use issues. So let's bring them in. And I think the question of chickens probably got a little bit more out, because it's like, well, people are complaining about roosters. Well, that's noise. Well, what's our noise ordinance? And the interesting thing with that is, if we could address those issues through existing ordinances, we probably would have, but we can't. The noise ordinance, to have a real noise ordinance, you really need to have a noise at a certain level over a 30-minute period. And that's done for a reason, so that you can't have a noise ordinance if, for something that happens, a big bang every so often, and so it's those that really doesn't fall under noise. And so we were trying to figure out, well, what can we do it under? And we, not unabashedly have, looked at other ordinances and reached out to find out what works elsewhere. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. And so with that, I think Carlos is going to kind of take you through a little bit more tonight, kind of some of the council thoughts and ideas. And really, all 3 of these things are the same. We look at it as what's a permitting process, and not with the idea of limiting these activities, but with the idea of putting them in a parameter, and with the idea of kind of making sure people understand what they're taking on. So that particularly in a case where you have some type of livestock, if somebody has a dog or a cat, I know where they can take that dog or cat if they don't want it anymore. I'm not sure where they can take that chicken or the beehive. Okay. And so that's why with these types of things, we want that exit strategy, because we're not really sure what they'll do. So we want people to have thought through it. And that's really, and so with that, I know this is a little bit different, particularly some of the livestock ideas are a little bit different from what you're normally asked to look at. It's also a little bit different in well, let's try this. Let's start, in a small way and see how it goes. But we appreciate the fact that you're willing to take a look at this. And to address these things. I know there were some questions, and I don't know if Commissioner Brophy's on tonight. Some questions with regard to, well, do we even have the authority to do these things? And that's why we have the city attorney, Paul Martin, on. For those commissioners, maybe you don't know Paul. Paul has been the city attorney for, I don't know, going on 100 years. And he is he really just works with in municipal law, and which is very different from other forms of law. And one of the things we appreciate with Paul is the fact that he kind of looks at things in a common sense approach. And so Paul is on here for that. And the other thing I did say in my memo, I know there's been some discussion about the length of the meetings and how do we shorten some of these things, and and why are we taking this on now? I do think Paul probably has some ideas maybe of how, maybe not making your meetings shorter, but maybe how do we take some of the items that you folks have to deal with and give them to somebody else? How can the ZBA help your workload now, which is extremely heavy? And the other question that I want to answer is why these things now when you are busy? And part of the idea on that is, if we don't put in some parameters now, and we continue to have things accumulate and more things happening that others don't like, we're just gonna end up further and further behind the 8 ball on these things. So what we're really asking the commission to do is look at these very specific things, put some parameters in, let's get something started, so that then the staff, we can move forward and we have something to go on. We're able to actually say, okay, from this day forward, you now have to get a permit for these specific activities. And one of the things that helps for even right now, particularly with regard to bamboo and with regard to the livestock, is we don't know where they're at right now. And that's really something we should know. We should be able to, we get complaints about, if there's a rooster crowing and we don't even know where it is. And unless you hear it, you're not going to know, or unless somebody tells you. So with that, I'm going to just kick it over to Paul a little bit, maybe to address any of the concerns about, well, do we really have the authority to look at these things? I hope he's going to say yes.
Well, after being complimented about being a practical person and a practical lawyer, I am confronted with a situation that I didn't really ponder all that much before, and that's the authority to regulate chickens, for example, and perhaps foliage, bamboo or turf grass issues. And I do not, I can tell you that fundamentally the city has to have some authority to regulate these things, and I have no doubt about that. The difficulty is, or the question that I have is the clash of interests that occurs when the city wants to regulate these things and a property owner wants to say, hey, this is my property. I have a property interest in how I use my property, and these are the things that I want to do. So there's a balance that has to be addressed at some point. And I think in terms of that can only really be addressed. I mean, I plan on looking at it in more detail and giving you more information about it. And I apologize that I don't have that information tonight. I really just didn't foresee this coming up. And when I finally did foresee it coming up, it was at the beginning of the meeting, and I started scrambling looking for case law on chickens and turf grass requirements, and there is not a heck of a lot out there. But obviously, cities across St. Louis County regulate chickens, and I'm not so sure about horticultural issues like bamboo.
Yes, there are a number of cities regulate the invasives, and again, I would like to point out, Paul, that we're not saying that people can't do something. We're talking about how they do it.
Exactly. And that kind of regulation, I feel is going to be just fine. And I do want to get a better grip on the law on the what you can and can't do. And again, I'm sorry that I have not explored that in more detail before this evening as I was trying to read these cases as you were going through your other materials. But ultimately, are you going to be able to do this in some way, shape, or form? I am very confident that you will. I just can't, I'm just not comfortable providing any further details on exactly what you can or can't do.
Can I just ask for another clarification as you go forward and look at this? And it totally makes sense. You need to look at it. I think my challenge last time was more not that the city can or can't do it. I imagine other cities are doing it and it's held up in law, so I can't imagine we couldn't as well. But my question is, I guess, why our panel versus the city council, you know, the mayor? Because I guess I look at it as, and it just, I look at our charge as regulations of, you know, buildings and design and things like that. And so I kind of use the example of, I think the city council would decide whether or not chickens or roosters are allowed. We would maybe decide whether or not you could have a coop that's X big or Y big or can't be more than 8 feet or 10 feet or can have a window or the roofing, you know, which, hey, trust me, we'll debate on that. But I think that was my charge. So I guess I'm curious as the attorney, and you don't have to answer it now, is it okay for our panel to be able to enforce that versus the city council, or is it just that we give a recommendation and they approve it? And so that's just what I would like to understand.
Okay, the city council could handle this administratively if they wanted to, but looking at it from the perspective of the premise that we're operating under is that this is going to be something that is permitted. We're not seeking to forbid this activity. Then it's very much a land use issue, and the PCDC certainly has the jurisdiction to consider and make recommendations on, in fact, would be required to consider and make recommendations on those kinds of questions. Now, I think while we explore the details, these parameters that we're going to explore, it'll become clearer as to the direction that this is going to go. My guess is that it's going to remain a zoning type issue and be a part of the zoning code. But there are going to be administrative elements to it. I mean, if we're looking at a permit process, that's clearly an administrative process. That is not something that PCDC would generally be involved in. But if the regulations that pertain to the permit process involve the size of coops or the amount of lot coverage that can be used for bamboo or something like that, that's obviously a land use issue, and PCDC needs to weigh in on.
I completely agree. I think I was thinking more that PCDC wouldn't be weighing in on are roosters allowed in a binary decision. I think we would weigh in. I agree on the land usage part of it. I was thinking more, we wouldn't necessarily be, we might be able to say like, can you keep any livestock? Can you keep any animals? I get that from a zoning, but in terms of like specifically roosters or no, you know, goats or no, those kind of things, I didn't think we would necessarily have that purview, but it's just a question I had, so.
Well, I would also say that, you know, I don't mean to add to your burden in terms of your workload, but the city council relies on PCDC quite a bit, and this is something that PCDC could be very helpful with, you know, regardless of whether technically, legally, it's it falls under land use. I mean, it is still something that affects the use of land, perhaps more broadly, or perhaps more in an administrative sense. But your guidance and recommendation and thoughtfulness is going to be very much appreciated.
Oh, sure. Now, I think in terms of giving recommendation, all for it. I just was thinking that it was more of a, we would be setting the not law, but the rule. And so, but I hear what you're saying. If it's a guidance or a recommendation, you know, hey, we're happy to pontificate on that, I think. So, okay.
Well, I have a quick question. I hope it's quick anyway. So if I'm trying to find, is there a distinction in Missouri law that we need to be sensitive to with regards to what the planning commission role is here and what we should not be dealing with? For instance, is there an aspect of dealing with chickens? Like I understand coops and the size of coops, but are we going to get into trouble if the planning commission deals with something like whether or not we would allow this kind of animal, like a rooster or a cow? Is that something that the planning commission has the authority to do, or is that something that we're going to get in trouble if we try to do that?
No, you're not going to get in trouble for it at all. Is there explicit state authority that allows you to make recommendations on the kinds of animals that might be allowed in an agricultural sense as an accessory use? No, there isn't anything explicit. But again, this is an accessory use of residential property. And I'm not suggesting that even anyone is calling on PCDC to make a determination about roosters. But if you felt like hens were okay, but roosters were not, and by the way, I had a neighbor across the street from me who had a rooster, and it was a trying period of time. Let's just put it that way. So I would have very much appreciated some kind of government regulation at that point. That goes back a few years. Anyway, my point is, no, you're not going to get in any kind of trouble. And I do think you have the authority to help the council out on this. And I especially think that's true if the council asks for the help, which is clearly what they're doing. I think you're insulated from any kind of complaint that you lack the authority to investigate and consider and make a recommendation on these types of questions.
Anybody else have any questions for Paul or Barb while they're still online? Well, thank you very much for answering some of those questions and going through it. And I think we look forward, Paul, to you kind of looking up some additional case law to help give us some guidance.
Right. And just a quick response. Yes, there are a lot of cities that do this in Missouri. There's not a lot of case law on these issues. And I would like to take a look at what the couple of cases that I have found, one out of St. Peter's and one out of the Bellefontaine neighbors. I would like to take a more thorough look at those cases. I would like to examine whether there have been any claims of constitutional deprivation as a result of the application of these kinds of ordinances. I tried to conduct that research while you were talking about the other applications this evening, but didn't get that far. And it's worth spending a little time on, both to get a fuller legal understanding of the issue and being able to advise you in the future about exactly what you can do and can't do.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate
Okay.
it. And thanks, Barb. I think if there's no other further questions, I think we'll go ahead and hear from the report that Carlos has already kind of put together.
All right. I'm going to stick around and listen if that's all right.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Chairman, I'll go ahead and kind of give an overview of what was on the report. And again, this is just for discussion purposes. at this point, any guidance the commission gives, we'll make sure that we include at our next meeting on October 1st. First and foremost, it goes down to what is the directive, what we've been given, and I think that's gone through. But I look at this, and we'll start referring this to urban agriculture, and that, you know, whether these activities and under what conditions do these activities fit within our community and within our community values. And that's the goal, is to establish and set up standards to make sure that they're compatible with all of that and the general characteristics of all of that. We're an urban and somewhat suburban environment, and our community and our council is very supportive of sustainable and environmental actions. They're aware of that. They've been supportive in both in our parks, a lot of our land use requirements to BMPs, to soils, you know, engineering soils that we've used it like for residential properties. So there's a commitment from the city of engaging in sustainable practices within our community. And now as we get into urban agriculture, you know, it's about that action. It's the verb. It's the process of doing agriculture in an urban environment and establishing the parameters or standards of what would be acceptable or compatible with our character, with our values. And that, you know, that being said, within our code, we have various regulations that restrict other types of uses. We have regulations that restrict group homes that do have a numerical cap, do have distance standards to make sure that group homes fit well within our single family residential settings. We also have restrictions for home occupations to make sure that it's not necessarily about the business, it's the conduct of a business in a residential environment to make sure that you know, materials, mailings and things aren't predominant, that there's control regarding the traffic and movement, and also where the commerce itself takes place in different environments. So we do have precedent within our codes that have regulations that establish community parameters or standards for the action of that activity. And in this case, we're looking at urban agriculture based on what the council has discussed. And the reason it's taken on, it was, you know, in discussions with the city manager, it was something I felt best fit in land use type of activities, because that's essentially that's where it's happening. We have regulations regarding animals that address dogs, cats, exotic pets to dangerous animals. We have regulations regarding noise, smell, stagnant water, and all that in our nuisance codes, and they're all within place. And many of the times, the way they're kind of scattered throughout, because they apply to different type of activities not associated, not always associated with land use, like it could be a car. You know, there's always confusion of who has that, which department within the city has that jurisdiction to try to enforce. And in many cases, it can come down to whether it's an officer, a police officer, or it's a code enforcement officer. And I think from a public relations perspective, and you know, given the values of our community, you know, it is not necessarily to have a police officer address a lot of these issues. I think they can be done through a code enforcement process. That code enforcement process gives us an opportunity to, you know, have an exchange with the property owner. It gives us an opportunity to establish standards, and it gives us an opportunity to establish schedules and work without being heavy-handed in the process. And when it does break down, there is a process to further that action, whether it's through the citations or through the courts. But I think, again, our residents deserve the respect and the benefit that these issues are not essentially, they're not severe public safety issues that warrant, you know, somebody more than an inspector or so to address. I think they fit well within a lot of the functions code enforcement has and does. And then as you break that down, you know, the umbrella of my department includes building and land use. And again, agriculture is not a building issue. It's not about building permits and things like that. They are in terms of the housing and the storage component of it, but ultimately that action, that verb, that activity of it is a land use issue, and it's no different than running a business out of a home and such. And what our goal is to, you know, based on what the direction from the council was to establish some reasonable standards regarding the rearing of livestock and horticulture. Neglect that number 3, forestry, you know, is looking at this as further. It's really about rearing livestock and horticulture, and under what parameters or standards are reasonable to have these type of activities within an urban and suburban environment. At some point, like I said, the goal is not to restrict or regulate, but at some point they go too far. And again, we have nuisance codes, we have animal codes and various codes, but nothing that describes at what point has somebody gone too far, or is it out of character with the surrounding or with the community values in there. And that's the goal. By having these standards, then my staff then has the ability to make distinguishes when something's permitted and it's okay, and when something's gone too far and it's not okay, and they need to readdress, reassess, or stop, one or the other. And then in addition to this, like the city manager had indicated, you know, have the filing systems and the records of where these activities take place. So again, we're looking for ways to continue urban agricultural activities in our community in a way that it can work for all of us, you know, both for the people that want to do it, and then those that surround it that may have concerns or questions when it just it gets out of hand or gets too far. And that's what the intent of this draft is. It sets out an outline for you within your report on how this would be incorporated in Article 16, accessory structures and uses within our zoning code. It sets up the format, and then it kind of outlines the primary things that we've been asked, and you know, especially on the rearing of livestock, that the people that want to raise hens for whatever purposes, or people that want to grow bamboo or place rain gardens or something, and to establish just some, again, compatible community standards, some adoptable standards in there, and also to provide a process for a resident who feels that if we are being overburdened, that they can appeal, similar to the height issue that just came before the commission in the previous application, that there is a process for consideration, given that all lots are unique and there are different attributes in every neighborhood or even block within all of that. And that's the goal. And again, going back to the staff report, you know, I feel this is best termed as urban agriculture, and that it be an accessory use within our zoning code and permitted only in our single family residential districts, that we fully define the goal of what is urban agriculture. And I think you have some samples from different communities, and develop the reason why we're doing this. And again, it's to reflect our community character and values, and then identify, you know, what type of livestock are permitted to be reared within single family residential property, and to the extent of horticulture that would be permitted in single family residential property. Establish a permitting process, adopt some standards, and always, you know, again, provide a process for appeals. This would assist the code enforcement aspect of it, and also provide us an opportunity to better educate our residents on what is permitted and when it goes too far. A good example, again, we do have in our zoning code a limitation on a chicken coop, but there is nowhere, and then we have in our nuisance code that you're allowed to have foul, but under no limitation as long as you maintain the upkeep of it. The goal here is, at some point, there, you can't have too many chickens on a lot, and the goal here is, again, we want to encourage our residents to be sustainable, to be environmentally aware and conscious, but within reasonable standards that fit within the character of our community. Same thing with horticulture when the intent of the landscaping just goes too far, And right now, there just isn't a definable line to make that distinction. And the goal here is to establish some limitation of where, again, my staff can go and make a decision without it being arbitrary in terms of, in this neighborhood, it just doesn't apply. Or in this lot, you just can't do it. This will help us be a little bit more consistent in our enforcement, and that helps us, again, exchange better with our residents. So I'll be glad to answer any specific questions. Again, from the council direction, they have talked about limitations of about 6 hens, limit the apiaries. And again, based on what the city managers indicated, that we may just limit it at those 2 for now. Always remember that codes are organic. They should always evolve because our world evolves and our environment evolves. So, it could be expanded, it could be reduced over time. And this is a first step for us. And it sounds like a first step for, I know there are other communities that have these regulations, but this could be a first step within the region in terms of setting it in this process and putting them as land use activities as opposed to just general laws or regulations in other parts of the ordinance. So you have the report, you have some recommendations. My concern more is just making sure that the framework is in there, and then we can start at our next meeting with filling in those gaps of that framework, and the commission is comfortable with the direction that we're going.
Carlos, I think this is looking good so far. I mean, I kind of flipped through what you've kind of started the outline for, and I think it's good. I do have a couple, questions. If we get to an item where it takes a lot of discussion item, I'm wondering if we just keep that out for now. If there's something that we're not agreeing to, or we just don't quite have a good understanding of, that we keep it out, and then we can revisit it later once we get some information. But this way we can get something to the council, based on that October deadline that they really wanted.
Correct. And I'll leave that to our liaison to report back to our council. But that is my understanding. The council goal is hoping that we can address this as a full package, but with the understanding that if there are piecemeal portions that need to come in, as long as there's movement in the process, or not to hold off some of the things that could be, if we can pick some of the easy fruit first, I think the council would be appreciative.
And then there was an item that was talking about grandfathering, and I'm not sure if we want to do that or not. And if we did have something that was grandfathered, maybe we need to make sure that the existing residents all approve of that. But I'm wondering if that would be better to be done as an appeal process, and then bring up the arguments as to why that should be allowed to be grandfathered in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it gives an opportunity, and I don't look at the appeal as a negative. It gives the resident the opportunity to present, actual facts or basis of either, why they need to do it, or under what conditions they're willing to do it. Again, similar to the height issue in the previous appeal, it gives an opportunity for the commission to serve somewhat as a jury to consider, some of these conditions, because it's not going to be a perfect ordinance. And right. Again, on my end, kind of more selfishly, is I don't want our inspectors making those type of decisions. I prefer that those go to the commission and it becomes a more of a collaborative discussion as opposed to administratively saying one should be here and one shouldn't.
Right, makes sense. Makes sense. Carol, you had a question?
Yes, I had a couple questions. Carlos, in your memo, you list rearing of livestock, horticulture, and forestry. And underneath horticulture, you've got vegetable gardens and high crops. Could you tell me what you mean by high crops? You talk about corn, wheat. Is that?
Yeah, we'll go back. I think the goal will be to kind of minimize that and refer to the specific items that the council have talked about. And again, I think forestry and horticulture are somewhat intertwined, that it would be about bamboo. But we have had some issues of excessive vegetable gardens. And we've also have had some issues where people have been growing some high, some high crops like corn on their property. And again, most of them are done within a reasonable way, but that way is not standardized. I mean, I think sometime in the future it may be something we would want to expand or address. I don't think it needs to be part of that discussion now, based on the council's direction.
Okay. And my next question is, can you, under forestry, you have bamboo called out, and I know something about bamboo, but what is it about bamboo in particular that's causing the council issues?
Okay, bamboo is a very invasive species, and unlike honeysuckle, usually it's planted intentionally. And what it does is that it has these long underground vines that extend and go beyond the perimeters of where the original planting footprint was, and they can impact adjacent property, they can impact adjacent structures. If you don't maintain it or properly plant it with a barrier, it can get out of hand. And the goal here is to ensure that there's proper setbacks, that the person is cognizant of the standards that are necessary for the planting of bamboo. The Missouri Botanical Garden has a lot of excellent information for somebody who wants to plant bamboo, because how invasive it is. It can get out of hand, and it can get out of hand quickly, and it can be very difficult to handle in there. And we have had instances between neighbors regarding the planting of bamboo. And from a code enforcement perspective, it's to us, again, to a building inspector or code officer, it's no different than honeysuckle. However, the person actually plants it in there. They purposely plant bamboo. Honeysuckle, their seeds or droppings can fall from birds. Bamboo is something that's intentionally done, and if it's not done in a correct fashion, it can have an impact both on your property and on your neighbors.
Yeah, I think the root system can even go under pavement. It could cross streets and go under driveways and stuff. It is, I can attest that it's pretty evasive plant.
How do you control it, or how do you get rid of it?
Bear with me. I just changed the screen section on you, so you have, like, on the Missouri Botanical Garden, regarding bamboo and how it's going. You can see here how it's kind of, growing through the pavement area there. And let's see. There is a barrier that you put in place before you put that bamboo, and it's kind of like this vertical plastic barrier that you ingrain into the ground, and it has to have, it's like a footing, it has to be deep enough to ensure that as the bamboo roots extend outward, they hit this barrier and don't go any further. If the barrier breaks, or if you don't put a barrier, the bamboo can then just extend. It's almost a free-for-all. And it's very difficult to remove. It's not like you can just weed it out. You know, you're weeding the full length to wherever the source initiated. And even if you just lawnmower it and cut it, and thinking that it's gone, it's still there. You know, the root system is still alive and will continue to grow. And here's some examples of the recommended barriers that the Missouri Botanical Garden has on their website. Again, the intent here is not to stop somebody from growing bamboo, but we need to make sure that they're cognizant and aware of how it should be done and the repercussions. And if it does get out of hand, we need to have a system in place that we can, protect, public safety, health, and general welfare of the adjacent property owner. Right now, in the issues that we've had here, it is difficult to cite somebody growing bamboo on their property. There's, we stretch it being a nuisance because it's not a health or safety issue. And by the time that it qualifies as a nuisance means that it's impacted some type of structure, and it's too late.
Okay, Carlos, what are the next steps? So you're going to kind of write up or expand upon the write-up here, and then have us review it at the next session?
That's correct.
Okay, great.
Are we going to break this into pieces and parts, because this is a lot to chew? Are we going to do livestock one meeting, horticulture the next, forestry the next, or are we going to try to?
I think we'll have it. It's a good question. I think we have it down just to two: the rearing of the livestock and the horticulture are the most prominent ones, and we should have for you on the meeting on the first. It'll be up to the commission, but we should have both complete. Now, as you discuss them, if you just want to discuss one in there, that's fine. But I think from our end, we'll have drafts for you set.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Carol.
Council had said they were looking for a recommendation from us by October, but our next meeting is October. So are we talking about the beginning or the end of October? Or what really was council thinking?
I think we should see what we can do, for the next session. And maybe if we can, talk to Missy, see which one that, if there's one in particular that they would like us to, with more emphasis, we can do that, and concentrate on that and try to get something, outlined or addressed with them.
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering, since our council liaison is here, I was wondering if she could help enlighten us.
Since you asked, we would really like to see all three of these at the end of October, not the beginning. Council will have its meeting at the end of October. We'd like to see this, all three. It's weeded down to the specifics of the most important right now, and that is the position of the council. Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Missy.
This is Mike, though, but I think this is a fairly large task that's going to eat up a lot of time. So do we want to set aside an entire meeting to discuss this? Because I'm not sure we can go through our, it took us an hour and a half, almost 2 hours to just go through the regular agenda, then to get to this. I think this is going to take some time to properly think through. Do we want to set aside an entire meeting to discuss this? Maybe talk about it a little bit on the first and set aside the entire, I guess it would be the 15th, to have a discussion about this. I'm just worried about properly setting our expectations, and making sure we have the time to be thoughtful about this.
Well, I think personally, and I see some heads nodding, with that, and I think that's a good point. But I do think we, that the next meeting is the one that we should, spend the time concentrating on, because typically we'll have questions or comments, and then Carlos will want to go back and revise it, as well. With that being said, I also think we need to really, the 9044 Watsonia Court, I definitely think that needs to be on the agenda for next item, especially since we've just asked them for more information. So I think if it's at all possible to limit some new business, we can address this as old business and then go into it, if that would be agreeable. I'm not sure what's on the forecast with Carlos and Jonathan.
Actually, it should just be Watsonia, I believe, at this point, and this one here. So the only thing we have new is a new house coming in for the second meeting.
I think we'd be better off, like I said, if we just try to limit, the old business item to Watsonia and then spend the rest of the time on this. I think we could really get a lot of good discussion on that, so we can get a final item before us at the next meeting. Is that agreeable to everybody?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a great idea.
All right, good. All right, if there's not anything else, I think let's move on to stormwater management. Or is there any discussion on this tonight?
I'm going to take my leave, folks.
Thanks, Paul.
And I will be in touch with you before the next meeting that you talk about this. All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, Chairman, I'm going to let Jonathan, Mr. Roper, is there anything you want to address on this, or?
I can't hear Jonathan. Can anybody else?
I'm sorry, I cut out. I'm sorry, what was that?
The stormwater, if there was, if we were going to go through it tonight, and how much, well, it looks like you brought it up, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you, and I'll keep it brief. So just to go over, we had from the last meeting, we had the 7 areas of interest we were looking at for stormwater. And this evening, we'll spend just a little bit of time going over, we'll recap weather and we'll go over topology. The next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
Or actually, Carlos, would you mind if I had control for a moment? Or
sure.
Okay, great.
You got it okay?
Did I advance or did you advance those?
I placed it on this slide. The others looked like they were weather, so I wasn't sure.
Okay. Yeah, if we can just go back to slide 30, please.
Did you say slide 30?
He did.
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right, so to recap last time, we looked at weather basically increasing in the amount of rain that comes down during storms. And we saw the what's happening with weather, basically the trends are that we're getting, more water in the April and the August time, which are a lot of water. If we can go to the next slide. And after looking at where, how much water comes down at a very city focused level, we look at where does water fall. So this is a map of the area, not only Olivet, but also the surrounding municipalities. And rain falls basically everywhere in this area. However, but if you notice that the blue areas are the higher ones and the going to yellow and the whitish areas are the lower sides. So in looking at this, if Stacy Park is the highest point in St. Louis County, and if blue is the highest, then we can kind of indicate you can find Stacy Park out of all this area here. But go to the next slide, please. When we look at the areas that are kind of concerning, which should be more of the yellows, a little bit of the lighter blues, but more of the yellows. Go to the next slide, please. Yep. And here's a picture of all of that with our, if you can go back to the last slide, please. You mind if I have control? Would that be? Might be a little bit easier. Okay, well, I'll continue. So the yellow areas indicate where water is going from the blue to when it rains. These actually also create our natural water courses, as we indicate when we talk about the stream buffer ordinance or the flood plains. Where the yellow is usually where you would find more water, which all of that has an advantage, where a lot of all of that is actually in the blue and less of it yellow. So within this, and we start looking, we know the responsibility that all of that, the water that pours from our city impacts other places. So we have to be cognizant of how that water is managed and all of that to others. Also, we have an advantage as to the amount of infrastructure that is needed to contain the water that flows and all of that and through all of that, as no other water is actually flowing from higher city to all of that to lower city. We have the advantage with saving on things like pipe sizes and infrastructure costs. And also from the contours, we start developing what the watersheds are. If you can go to the next slide, please. So within all of that, we start seeing watersheds, which basically are where every drop of water that falls in this particular area, collectively, the drops of water will end up at a certain point, unless it's like absorbed by a tree in the soil or evaporated in site. But basically, any water that, let's say, flows on this purple area here, which is that orange line is Old Bottom there. Anything that flows south of Old Bottom to a certain point goes south towards Ladue. Anything in this blue area at the top here, which includes part of like North Price, Hilltop, Indian Meadows, Grandview area, that actually all flows to the River to Pear Concrete Channel. There are also further subwatersheds, which we won't get into tonight, but into the future. We can go to the next slide, please. And looking at, actually, it's interesting how all of that was even formed. If anyone heard the name like Old Plank Road, where that was between Olivet, Olive Boulevard and Old Bonham, there are different high points in the area. Like Old Bonham, if you notice where Stacy Park is, and you notice the blue area that kind of goes about, that kind of formulates Old Bonham Road. There was a reason Old Bonham was one of the first roads in our town, was because it was one of the higher elevated points. And Old Plank Road, interesting enough, between, why is, you can see the quote at the side, one of Olivet's historic facts, number 25. It was named Old Plank Road because the company laid wooden boards down to avoid the muddy roads during the spring rain. So if you notice at the area where, get to my highlighter here, where Olive Boulevard meets 170, you notice that it's pretty yellow over here. Yellow being it's one of the low points. So versus Old Bonham here is more so green. So one of these areas was actually a little bit, through topology, it was a little bit lower, therefore it saw more water. And we all know at 170 and Olive that the detention area is there as well. So topology actually, we have to look at what were the high points, where are the low points, and how do we treat these. We go to the next slide, please. And some of the areas, we have two stark differences in how we actually treat the where water travels in these low points. So on the left side, we have where Dealman Road crosses right behind the houses off Napoleon, or if you know where the train tracks are, just north of City Hall on Dealman. This is the bridge that crosses that. So there are some areas that actually they address their stormwater with these concrete channels, similar to the one that we also have off Old Bottom and Bond Price. They have a concrete channel back there. Or on the other hand, there are other areas which we'll dive quickly into that are more open with different sewer inlets. So this on the right is the detention at 170 and Olive. And you can actually see that little black spot there in the corner, which is actually the one of the overflows. Yeah, next slide, please. And one of the advantages I noted earlier about the amount of water that all of it has to worry about and where we are with the elevation. On the right side is the 82nd Street, 81st, 82nd Street channel in University City. It's a concrete channel that's right next to, if you know where like Frank and Helen's or the McDonald's, Mandarin House, Super Food City, there's this channel that literally is at least, I would say at least 30 feet wide. Probably more than that, and it actually connects to the image on the left here. There's a lot more concrete on the right side, and I mean between the width of that area, the depth, and also the walls of that concrete channel, that's a lot more expenditures that we would have to put out as a city or whoever. A project cost would be higher. So we just need to look at, fortunately we're not, we have our issues, but there are other issues that other people have that we also need to, we have to recognize, our water does impact other places as well. Next slide, please. Now there are other at the low points, there are other types of management, which is more either the natural side of things, or it's a combination between the natural and the concrete channel or a pipe. So this right here is actually at one of the property in Olivet where they have the low point, the creek, going right through their backyard, and that's one of the pictures where they actually have standing water there. So different than the one that you saw at Indian Meadows or in University City, this one actually has standing water, and that's another condition that the commission would have to look at soon. That's also a natural water course. If we looked at the topology map, we would notice that that area that we're looking at would definitely be yellow on the screen. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. A lot of the areas that are yellow or that light turquoise blue actually end up on others' maps as well. So on the left side here, we can see that St. Louis County, they have indicated the area. This is just roughly south of Arbor Road, south of the Ramsgate addition subdivision, and just south of Covington Meadows. There's an actual 500-year floodplain, a 100-year floodplain down there, as well as, and if you look at the right screen, like Deer Creek and their watershed, they note that there's what's called the Black River actually starts just, I don't know if they have it actually indicated starting within all of that or just south in Ladue, but it's definitely there. So we not only have channels, but we also have actual rivers that our city drains into. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And this is the final slide I have in the evening. This is just, and we're not going to get much more into infrastructure, but this is the city sewer system with a buffer around it. So the buffer, about 100-foot buffer around each of the stormwater sewer is there, along with the yellow dots, which indicate the inlets. So there are some areas that you can definitely see are being somewhat managed, at least with infrastructure, but the areas that actually are more black indicate areas with fewer sewers, which probably would contribute to a lot more water. So just to note that the concrete channel is not shown there. So where at the top, or the top portion here, the repair is not being shown, but just a note down here, and it's interesting, the stark difference between Creve Coeur, which is on the left side here, and Ladue, which is on this the bottom side here. Creve Coeur has plenty of inlets over here, similar to all of that. Ladue, when you go south, literally has a stark difference of fewer inlets down here. So we also, with our topology, we also have to treat these areas are different for a number of reasons. So we have to look at, what are the impacts of pouring our water into a channel, concrete channel, versus pouring it south in Ladue, where there are less infrastructure to handle it. But with that, that would conclude the presentation, unless there are any questions or comments. But we'll have more on this at the next commission meeting.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'll look. Anybody else have any questions or comments? If not, I'd say let's move on. Thanks, Jonathan. Let's go on to other business. This is item A, meeting minutes. And we have meeting minutes for September 3rd, 2020 that's been given to us. Does anybody want to acknowledge receipt of those?
I'll acknowledge.
Great. It's been acknowledged by Mr. Lewis, and let's, Carlos, we don't need to vote, right? Okay, great. So we'll move on to reports, and we'll go to you, Carlos, and you're muted right now, so.
Sorry about that. I did respond back, and I guess I was talking to myself. So no, there's no need for anything beyond Mr. Lewis's acknowledgement. Regarding council dates, next Tuesday is the scheduled city council meeting for their second meeting of September. October dates, work session is on the October 6th, and then council dates are the 13th and the 27th. For our commission, our October dates are October 1st and the 15th. November is the 5th and the 19th, and December the 3rd and the 17th, and that will end our schedule for 2020. It's been a fast year. On city events, things of importance, note Dealman Road will be closed beginning September 28th. So if you're going southbound on Dealman past Olive, you will be rerouted or detoured. I believe it's going to be through Hillendale and then Villa. And if you're going north of Old Bottom on Dealman, you're going to have to turn around and go back to Old Bottom and go east to west to get around there. We anticipate that the road will be closed 4 to 6 weeks, and that is for the replacement of that culvert structure right there where the bike trail path is located at. Don't forget the 7th annual Turkey Trot. Registration is open. The Great Rivers Greenway does have a feedback request online regarding the use of their technical assistance plan funds until next week. And all of it is in partnership with one of these fund requests. So if you get a chance, it helps us in the grant program if you have an opportunity to respond. COVID-19, just some general info and updates. Remember, we still have a mandatory mask policy. Parks, restrooms, and play equipment are still closed. And it looks like they're going to try to schedule a municipal court meeting. It'll be virtually, and that'll be scheduled for September 23rd. On September 29th, the mayor will be hosting a Zoom with the mayor, and her guest will be County Prosecutor Wesley Bell. I encourage commission members to attend. It's a pretty neat opportunity and impressive to have the county prosecutor in attendance here in Olivet. And I believe it's going to be a live discussion between the mayor and him, and then zoomed out from our community center. October 10th and 11th, there will be a community-wide garage sale from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Registrations are available, I believe, online and at the city center here. October 24th is National Drug Take Back. That will be on a Saturday. And then on November 7th, there will be an e-waste document shredding and prescription drug drop-off on Saturday, November 7th. I think the only fees are for for large monitors or TVs. So take advantage of the situation. On fire and police, again, the police department does have a registration open for community cameras, and they've also posted their department policies online. For Parks and Recreation, the September 25th scheduled outdoor movie was canceled. I know they're looking to reschedule a date for that in October. And don't forget the census. We are up to 82%, but that puts us the 44th best response rate in the state. Behind Webster Road, but we're ahead of Creve Coeur, so
okay,
it's pretty good. I-170 Gateway, which is the Olive Crossing, MSD continues their work on the site. We just issued the permits for the lateral installation that goes south of where the old Office Max structure was. So they're getting that started, and that's going to go parallel with the freeway, go behind Stoneleigh Towers and into Bond Price Terrace, where the concrete channel is at. The city center redevelopment area, which is now the Oliver, which is the apartment complex at the old City Hall site. Permit has been issued for the full construction, and the site's been prepped, and they're continuing to work on the grading and the site improvements. For Plant Haven, the Plant Haven Commercial Center, we're still reviewing the building permits. For Easy Storage, again, it's been pretty slow in the progress on there, but they're still committed to that site. And for the Firestone there at the southeast corner of Gilman and Olive, and I should rename that, we have reviewed their building permits, and we're actually ready to issue the permits, but they still need to close on the property and record a couple of plats before that can be issued. So I think that covers all the little highlights in there. I'll be glad to answer any specific questions. And if not, I'll leave it to the liaison.
Thanks, Carlos. Any questions? Being done, Missy, go ahead.
Chairman Jurgel, it's always a pleasure to be an observant of my favorite board. And Mr. Trejo has always done a great job with the summary of things. I'm appreciative of what you're doing. I will again reiterate that council has all the faith in the world that some levels of recommendations can come to us with regards to the matters that you're discussing, that we will no longer call quality of life. We will call them urban agricultural issues. And the only thing I really have to add to that is this year, yes, Target Chart is virtual, which means the first time my physical body will not have to be there. So I asked the mayor if there was things such as virtual bike riding. I have a recumbent bike in my basement. So for the first year, I'm going to participate. So come on, I'm going to have a recumbent bike in the basement going. So everybody, there's no excuse. You physically don't have to be there to work. You can get on the bike, you can walk, you can do what you got to do. So for the first year in, as the 7th or 8th year, I will participate. So everybody, come on. If I can do it, you can do it. All right. That's all. I love you all. Thank you so much for what you do. Be safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Anybody else? That being said, I think we'll adjourn this meeting at 9:45. Hopefully we can get faster. So thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Please be safe.